There are already 66 products in this presentation that overlap with Nightwing. Some remember conversations, some write code, some live in your home, on your face, or inside a small computer. So this is not a story about discovering an empty market. It is a story about a crowded market that still feels strangely incomplete. Nearly every piece exists. The question is whether anyone has made those pieces operate as one accountable personal intelligence. The phrase personal AI now hides several different markets. Memory products capture the day. Agents perform work. Wearables stay close to the body. Smart home systems control the room. Companions focus on conversation. Local compute products keep models under your ownership. They all sound related, but each one controls a different transition in a person's life. Together, these companies validate most of the Nightwing thesis. People want systems that remember. They want models that can judge difficult situations. They want agents that can act. But the fourth verb is still underbuilt: retain what worked. The missing layer is not more activity. It is a governed loop that turns verified outcomes into a better understanding of the person. To compare products this different, I am not scoring which company is simply better. I am measuring overlap with the PCOS objective across continuity, agency, local ownership, surfaces, and governance. And Nightwing gets two rows: current and target. That distinction matters. A future architecture is not present evidence. If Nightwing cannot demonstrate something today, the presentation cannot quietly award it the point. A chatbot helps at the moment of asking. A personal cognitive operating system has to cover a longer loop. It must preserve what led to the question, capture the relevant context, help make a decision, support real work, inspect the evidence, and remember what the outcome taught. Nightwing is not meant to be one custom chat window. It is meant to be the operating relationship around all of those transitions. That broad scope becomes dangerous if one agent controls everything. So Nightwing is split deliberately. Nightwing is the mind, conversation, identity, continuity, and meaning. Nightwork is the hands, plans, files, tools, commands, and verification. The truth plane sits beneath both. It records what actually happened. One system understands the intention. Another performs bounded work. Evidence decides whether either of them may say it is complete. Throughout this video, every Nightwing claim belongs to one of three states. Verified now means the capability has been demonstrated with evidence. Architecture. Advantage means the design may create an edge, but it still needs proof. Not yet ahead means a competitor currently does the job better. These labels are not decoration. They are the trust contract for the entire comparison. Future ambition cannot be smuggled into the present tense. The field becomes clearer when we divide it into 6 control points: the personal operating layer, memory, daily presence, local intelligence, execution, and the compute underneath. Nightwing has competitors in every arena. The real strategic question is how those arenas connect without collapsing into one uncontrolled agent. The closest whole system challenges are not merely models. They package routing, tools, identity, memory, or distribution into an operating layer. Otto, OpenClaw, and Hermes approach the problem directly. Apple, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and Anthropic approach it through platforms. Whoever owns this layer decides how every other capability connects. Memory is not just finding an old sentence. A trustworthy system needs to know where a claim came from, when it was true, how confident it should be, what contradicts it, and whether an outcome changed it. Retrieval makes information available. Provenance and revision make memory accountable. Presence is not solved by forcing one strange new device into every moment. A smart pad can capture. A smart board can hold shared thinking. A presence node can listen only when permitted. A wrist surface can signal quietly. The devices should be windows into one persistent system, not separate assistants competing for identity. Local intelligence matters for privacy, latency, availability, and cost. But local first does not mean cloud. Never. Nightwing can use GPT for strategic depth and Opus for technical criticism when the local system is uncertain. The important layer is the control plane: what ran, where it ran, why it escalated, and what the escalation cost. Agency sounds impressive until the system changes the wrong file or claims a test fast when it never ran. Nightwork treats execution as a sequence: plan, approve, execute, verify, and only then learn. Action without evidence is not operational capacity, it is convincing theater. Hardware changes faster than personal identity should. Nightwing may run across an edge node, a local core, a workstation, and occasional cloud compute. None of those boxes should become the mind. The software identity, memory rules, and governance model must survive every hardware generation. Auto is the clearest packaged competitor in this field. It combines a managed computer, mobile control, model routing, credentials, agent identity, and appliance style onboarding. That product clarity is something Nightwing does not yet possess. But several auto capabilities remain pre-order or preview claims. Nightwing's proposed difference is deeper continuity, specialized nodes, and verified outcome learning. Today, that remains an architecture advantage, not a market victory. OpenClaw approaches personal agency through an open ecosystem of local tools, skills, and communication channels. It proves that capability can expand without waiting for one vendor. Nightwing should learn from that openness while adding stricter skill intake, permission scopes, evidence traces, and a stable identity above the tool ecosystem. Hermes is the most direct challenge to Nightwing's adaptation thesis. It focuses on persistent memory, tool use, and procedural skill learning. That is close to the idea of a system improving through work, instead of waiting for full retraining. Nightwing's response must be stronger governance, lessons proposed from verified outcomes, tested in shadow mode, and promoted only when they improve held-out performance. Personal AI treats memory as the foundation of identity. That validates a central Nightwing belief. Continuity changes the relationship with an assistant, but accumulated memory is not automatically trustworthy. Nightwing still needs provenance, contradiction handling, confirmation, and evidence before a remembered statement becomes part of the canonical personal model. Rabbit R1 is useful as a field surface experiment. It explored a dedicated interface for intent and action outside the phone. It also shows the danger of asking a new device to replace too much, too quickly. Nightwing should borrow the immediacy, not the replacement promise. The surface should remain one window into a larger system. Apple begins with an advantage. Nightwing cannot imitate trusted distribution across phones, computers, watches, and homes. Its privacy architecture and system-level integration make personal intelligence feel native. Nightwing cannot claim to be ahead here. Its opportunity is different. User-owned continuity across non-Apple surfaces, explicit evidence states, and a system that remains replaceable beneath the identity layer. Google can connect search, Android, workspace, cameras, speakers, and the home. That ecosystem context is enormous, but scale and personal ownership are not the same thing. Nightwing's thesis is that the user should control the memory, routing, permissions, and learning policy, even when Google remains one of the outside intelligence providers. Microsoft owns a powerful work graph, documents, meetings, email, identity, and enterprise workflows. Copilot can understand the organization around the task. Nightwing needs to understand the person across organizations and projects. The two can connect, but company context should not quietly become the owner's canonical identity or personal memory. Alexa has ambient reach, household familiarity, and a commercial ecosystem built around action. Alexa Plus extends that with generative conversation and services. Nightwing should learn from the low-friction presence. But convenience is not the same as a user-governed second brain. The memory, incentives, and spending authority need clearer boundaries. ChatGPT and Codex are not minor competitors. They are the quality benchmark for broad reasoning, language, repository understanding, and reliable code work. Nightwing currently depends on that frontier capability when local models are not enough. The goal is not to pretend the gap has vanished. The goal is to use GPT selectively, preserve the evidence and lessons locally, and make the Nightwing relationship larger than any one provider session. Claude, especially Opus, is Nightwing's strongest technical critic. It is good at finding brittle architecture, missing tests, unsafe assumptions, and specifications that sound complete but are not. That makes Claude an overseer, not Nightwing's identity. It should receive bounded evidence packets, return advisory criticism, and never gain silent authority over shell access, secrets, or canonical memory. Lenovo Kira points toward personal intelligence, becoming an OEM layer across devices. That distribution can make continuity feel effortless. It also creates a strategic risk. The hardware vendor may own the identity. Nightwing should work across machines precisely so the person, not the latest device, remains the persistent center. Limitless makes daily life searchable. That proves people value continuity beyond type chats. But ambient capture creates a harder question. What deserves to become memory? Nightwing needs consent, source boundaries, retention rules, and confidence labels before a captured moment becomes a stable claim about a person. B explores the next step, ambient memory, that can surface reminders and actions. That is useful because capture should not end as a transcript archive. But the system must distinguish a passing comment from a real commitment. Nightwing's opportunity is to make that conversion explicit, reviewable, and tied to the correct project context. OMI is compelling because it treats the wearable as an open node. Developers can extend what it captures and how it connects. That fits Nightwing's specialized node strategy. The important boundary is identity. OMI can become an excellent ear or field surface without needing to become the entire mind. Plot succeeds by making the product's job obvious, record, transcribe, and summarize. That simplicity is a direct lesson for Nightwing hardware. A node should not explain the entire PCOS architecture. It should perform one trusted action with almost no friction, then let the central system interpret the result. Rewind made the recent past of the computer searchable. That is powerful evidence when a person asks, "What did I see, write, or decide?" But a screen recording is not automatically understanding. Nightwing still has to identify relevance, protect sensitive material, and separate observed activity from inferred intention. Memory turns conversations into reusable memories for applications and agents. That makes memory infrastructure easier to adopt. Nightwing can learn from the extraction layer, but an extracted fact is only a candidate. Canonical memory needs a source, confidence, namespace, contradiction checks, and sometimes direct confirmation from the user. Let her treat state and memory as visible parts of the agent, not hidden prompt magic. That is close to Nightwing's need for inspectable continuity. The next requirement is governance across time. Who changed the memory? What evidence supported it? What depended on it? And how the system rolls back a bad belief. ZEP emphasizes temporal context, which matters because yesterday's truth can become today's stale state. A project can finish, a preference can change, a relationship can move. Nightwing needs memory that understands sequence and freshness instead of retrieving an old sentence merely because it looks semantically similar. Supermemory validates the idea that context should move across tools. A person should not rebuild their background in every new application. Portability, however, is only one part of continuity. Nightwing must also decide what is authoritative, what is temporary, and what a verified outcome should revise. Hindsight moves beyond simple recall toward reflection. That is important because useful memory should help the system recognize patterns. But reflection can also invent a neat story after the fact. Nightwing's learning loop needs evidence, attribution, and regression tests before a reflection becomes a trusted operating lesson. MemoOS frames memory as an operating layer shared across models and agents. That is strategically close to Nightwing. But the complete PCOS still needs identity boundaries, human approval, execution evidence, surface roles, and a way to distinguish personal truth from the temporary state of a worker. Honcho builds a model of the user through interaction. That can make conversation more coherent and personal. But a model of the user is still an interpretation, not the user. Nightwing must preserve that humility. Profiles should be inspectable, confidence, weighted, and correctable. Intimacy without that distinction can become confident. Misrepresentation. Friend reduces companionship to one available gesture. That simplicity proves emotional availability can be a product value by itself. But companionship is not verified agency. Nightwing has to preserve warmth while remaining honest about memory, uncertainty, tools, and whether anything in the outside world actually changed. Brilliant Labs treats classes as an open visual surface rather than a closed assistant. That is useful for Nightwing because a wearable does not need to own the whole intelligence. It can provide sight, glanceable context, and lightweight interaction, while the deeper memory and reasoning remain on the local core. Ray-Ban Meta sets the benchmark for wearable distribution and social acceptability. The intelligence fits inside an object people already understand. Nightwing hardware is not ahead here. The lesson is that presence succeeds when the device disappears into ordinary life, while privacy signals and capture controls remain unmistakable. The Humane AI pin was an ambitious attempt to move intelligence beyond the phone. Its difficulties are not a reason to mock the idea. They are a warning about latency, battery life, unclear interaction, and asking one unfamiliar device to replace an entire ecosystem. Nightwing should build specialized nodes that fail gracefully, not a single object that must do everything. Bali explores what happens when an assistant has a visible body in the home. Embodiment can make presence legible and create a shared point of attention. It also raises the stakes. A moving sensor needs clear permission, physical safety, predictable behavior, and an obvious way to become unavailable. Replica proves that people value continuity, attention, and a relationship that feels emotionally persistent. That is real product value even without raw tools or execution. Nightwing should not dismiss companionship as cosmetic. It should connect emotional continuity to stronger truth, discipline, user control, and a much clearer boundary between support and authority. Buy remains a useful benchmark for conversational warmth. It can make an exchange feel attentive without turning every reply into a project plan. Nightwing needs that ease, especially on the smartpad and in daily conversation. But it should learn the principle, not copy the persona. Warmth must emerge from attention, continuity, and restraint in Nightwing's own voice. Character. AI demonstrates enormous demand for distinct, expressive personas. It also shows that persona consistency and factual authority are different problems. Nightwing needs one coherent identity that can remain playful and intimate while still distinguishing imagination, uncertainty, memory, and verified work. Aura Advisor turns longitudinal sleep and recovery signals into guidance. That is a powerful example of advice grounded in the person's own history. Nightwing can use health context only through explicit permissions and narrow scopes. A personal operating system should connect signals without quietly becoming an unqualified medical authority. Whoop. Coach ties advice to strain, sleep, and recovery measurements. That closes more of the loop than generic encouragement. The larger Nightwing lesson is simple. Guidance becomes valuable when later evidence can show whether it helped. Outcome-linked learning should extend beyond health into projects, habits, decisions, and work. OpenJavis frames personal AI as a systems research problem. That matters because model quality alone does not solve context, tools, memory, routing, or evaluation. Nightwing shares that premise. The next step is product discipline, turning a research blueprint into something dependable enough to live with every day. Coach proves that a useful research companion can be self-hosted around a person's own documents and knowledge. It is a strong lesson in owned context. Nightwing needs to extend that continuity beyond research, while keeping the same principle. Private sources should not require surrendering the whole personal model to a cloud service. Anything LLM makes the document workspace a practical unit for local AI. That boundary is useful because projects need separate sources, permissions, and retrieval. But a person is larger than a folder of documents. Nightwing must preserve project isolation while maintaining carefully governed continuity across the person's life. Jan teaches a product lesson more than an architecture lesson. Local models become valuable when ordinary people can actually run them. Nightwing's compute layer should feel the same way. Model installation, routing, updates, and fallback cannot remain a collection of terminal rituals if the system is meant to become daily infrastructure. Open Web UI offers one interface across many local and remote models. That flexibility makes it an excellent console. But a console is not yet a persistent second brain. Nightwing needs identity, memory governance, work evidence, surface awareness, and learning that survive whichever model happens to answer. Leon demonstrates that voice assistants can remain self-hosted and extensible. That is important for a room node or local command surface. Nightwing can reuse that pattern while keeping voice as one interface among many, not the identity or the source of truth. Open Voice OS separates wake words, speech, intent, and skills into an open voice layer. That modularity fits Nightwing's adaptive philosophy. The system should be able to replace a speech engine or wake word component without rebuilding memory, identity, or the rest of the personal operating system. Home Assistant is the strongest candidate for Nightwing's local physical world bus. It already understands devices, rooms, automations, permissions, and local operation at a maturity. The correct relationship is clear. Nightwing decides what the user means. Home Assistant performs named, permissioned actions in the physical environment and returns evidence. Raspi validates offline voice satellites, lightweight endpoints distributed through rooms, with heavier understanding kept elsewhere. That is almost exactly the presence node role. The node should capture and respond quickly, while the central Nightwing system owns context, memory, and decisions. Local AI reduces provider lock-in by presenting local models through familiar API interfaces. That makes models easier to swap and route. But compatibility does not create a personal operating system. Nightwing still needs the policy that chooses models, protects context, records cost, and judges the result. Ollama has become the simplest doorway into local language models. It makes downloading, running, and switching models practical. Nightwing already benefits from that simplicity. The missing layer is orchestration, hardware-aware routing, warm model management, truth gates, fallback behavior, and evidence about which model actually produced each answer. LM Studio is an excellent laboratory for comparing local models, prompts, quantizations, and performance. Nightwing needs that experimentation. But a laboratory is not the production control plane. Promotion into daily use should require fixed tests, safety checks, latency evidence, and a clear rollback when a promising model behaves badly. OpenHands demonstrates how much a software agent can do inside a complete environment: browse, inspect code, run commands, edit files, and coordinate work. Nightwork should learn from that depth without becoming an unrestricted developer platform. Its role is narrower: choose bounded workers, preserve approvals, collect evidence, and return the result to Nightwing. OpenCode's plan and build separation validates a core Nightwork pattern. Exploration and architecture can remain read-only. File changes begin only after the objective, likely impact, and approval state are clear. Nightwork can use OpenCode as a worker, but the run record and final verification must remain under Nightwing's own control. Goose proves that local automation becomes far more capable through extensions and MCP-style tools. The same extensibility also expands the attack surface. Nightwing should borrow the tool ecosystem only behind typed schemas, profile scoped grants, network rules, output scanning, and a complete trace of every action. Aider is valuable because it focuses on precise repository edits, code base maps, and patch-oriented work. That makes it a strong Nightwork worker. It does not need to become Nightwing's identity or memory. The operating system supplies the objective and boundaries. Aider proposes or performs the edit. Nightwork verifies the result. Client demonstrates that approval is not only a security policy, it is an interaction design. People need to understand what the agent wants to do without reading a legal document before every action. Nightwing's flow, ask, and locked model should preserve that simplicity, while Nightwork handles the detailed command policy underneath. RuCode uses modes to separate different styles of work. That is a useful lesson for Nightwork. Planning, editing, reviewing, researching, and debugging should not receive identical prompts or permissions. The selected skill should determine the allowed tools, evidence requirements, and approval policy. Continue highlights an important truth. The context supplied to a model can matter as much as the model itself. Nightwing needs explicit context providers for files, documentation, memories, recent work, and tools. Each source should carry freshness, provenance, and a token budget instead of being dumped into one giant prompt. Manus represents the Cloud General Agent promise: give the system an objective and let it navigate tools, research, and deliverables. That sets a benchmark for autonomy and polish. Nightwing's answer is not simply more autonomy. It is persistent local ownership, narrower authority, visible evidence, and the ability to continue even when a cloud provider changes. GenSpark demonstrates that research should end in something useful, not just a long answer. Nightwing needs the same movement from sources to plans, documents, presentations, and decisions. The additional requirement is continuity, the artifact, its evidence, and the later outcome should remain connected so the system can learn what actually helped. Lindy makes agents accessible without requiring users to engineer the whole workflow. That is an important competitive lesson. Capability that takes hours of configuration may never become daily behavior. Nightwing must hide most orchestration complexity while keeping the consequential permissions and evidence understandable. Twin focuses on managed browser work, where useful agency meets messy real interfaces. Nightwing will need bounded browser and computer use too. The safe version begins with named tasks, scoped sessions, visible progress, cancellation, and evidence. It does not expose an unrestricted remote control surface to every prompt. Agent 0 explores recursive autonomy, agents creating or directing more agents to solve a problem. That can be powerful, but recursion multiplies uncertainty, cost, and permissions. Nightwing may eventually coordinate many workers. The outer loop must still remain legible to the user, budgeted, cancelable, and accountable for every delegated action. DGX Spark represents the local AI appliance benchmark, compact hardware designed specifically for model development and inference. It can expand what Nightwing runs locally. But buying a stronger box does not create continuity, judgment, or governance. The machine improves the frontier beneath Nightwing. It does not become Nightwing. Ryzen AI. Max systems show why unified memory matters. Larger local models are often constrained less by raw arithmetic than by how much fast memory the system can address. That changes the affordable local frontier. Nightwing should route models around measured latency, memory pressure, power, and quality, instead of treating parameter count as the only signal. Framework Desktop brings repairability and modular thinking to local AI hardware. That matches the long-term Nightwing philosophy. Personal infrastructure should be maintainable, understandable, and replaceable. A system intended to hold years of continuity should not depend on a sealed box that becomes disposable when one component fails. The HP Z2 Mini represents the professional workstation route, compact compute backed by enterprise support, validation, and operational reliability. Nightwing may need that boring maturity more than another experimental benchmark. A second brain that fails after an update is not personal infrastructure. It is a weekend project. Minis Forum demonstrates that capable local AI does not always require an exotic appliance. Commodity mini PCs can offer strong memory, accelerators, and connectivity at accessible prices. That is important for a distributed Nightwing future, where different homes or rooms may need different levels of local capability. Mac Studio combines strong efficiency, unified memory, quiet operation, and mature creative workflows. It is a serious local model platform. The trade-off is ecosystem dependence and less replaceable hardware. Nightwing should remain portable enough to benefit from Apple Silicon without letting one vendor define the permanent shape of the system. Home Assistant Green and Yellow prove that a small, quiet local hub can become trustworthy household infrastructure. That is the right pattern for physical control. The hub owns device reliability. Nightwing owns conversation and intention. Neither layer needs to impersonate the other. Jetson places meaningful compute near cameras, microphones, robots, and sensors. That reduces latency and protects raw data. Nightwing can use edge intelligence for perception and immediate local responses. But the enduring identity, canonical memory, and governance policy should remain coordinated centrally. The edge can think nearby without becoming a separate person. After 66 competitors, the pattern is clearer. Memory companies can preserve extraordinary amounts of the past. Frontier assistants can reason and communicate at a level Nightwing does not yet match locally. Agents can perform increasingly complex work. Wearables and home systems can remain present throughout the day. But very few systems connect continuity, calibrated judgment, bounded agency, verified outcomes, and revised personal understanding. The market has built powerful transitions. The whole accountable loop is still unfinished. Nightwing's proposed advantage is not a secret model. The local Nightwing core provides speed, privacy, continuity, and daily presence. GPT contributes strategic depth when the problem requires a wider horizon. Opus contributes technical criticism and risk finding. Nightwork performs bounded action. Nightwing synthesizes the result under one identity. That architecture is promising. It is also still a hypothesis. It becomes an advantage only when real tests show that the combined system is better than its individual parts. The first moat is continuity. but not in the form of a giant chat history. Nightwing needs a trustworthy personal model. Every important claim should retain its source, time, confidence, contradictions, and relationship to decisions and outcomes. Old context needs to decay or retire. Corrections need to win. Continuity becomes valuable when the system remembers accurately enough to support the next choice. The second mode is calibration. Nightwing must separate what is observed from what is inferred, what remains uncertain, and what decision follows. GPT and Opus may disagree. The local system should preserve that disagreement instead of averaging it into fake confidence. A useful second brain is not the one that always sounds certain. It is the one that helps the person see where certainty is deserved. The third mode is verified agency. Night work should record the objective, plan, approval, files, commands, tests, rollback path, and outcome. A confident model response is not proof that work happened. Nightwing may say done only when the evidence says complete, or when it clearly explains what could not be verified. That discipline is less dramatic than autonomy, and far more valuable. Nightwing does not need one device that replaces the phone, computer, watch, speaker, and notebook. It needs specialized nodes. The smart pad captures and commands. The smart board supports shared thinking. Smart key carries trust and portable identity. The presence node handles the room. The wrist node offers a quiet glance. The phone remains the universal fallback. These are windows into Nightwing, not separate assistants with competing memories. Nightwing should absorb Otto's onboarding, OpenClaw's ecosystem, Hermes' learning patterns, Home Assistant's local trust, and Codex's verification discipline, but it should absorb them through governed adapters. Every external system should remain permissioned, traced, evaluated, and replaceable. The goal is not to build every capability from scratch. It is to prevent any borrowed capability from quietly becoming the owner of the system. Nightwing still loses. GPT and Opus remain stronger in broad knowledge, difficult reasoning, and robust language. Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta already own daily distribution. Mature agents have wider connector ecosystems and more polished long-horizon execution. Nightwing has not yet proven independent reliability. Security operations, manufacturing, customer support, or sustained use outside my own environment. These are not details to hide beneath a roadmap. They are the work. Honesty is not a weakness in this architecture. It is the governance layer. The next step is not another claim. It is a proof campaign. Nightwing should face identical hidden prompts in 5 modes: local only, local plus tools, GPT assisted, Opus assisted, and total compute. We measure correctness, evidence quality, latency, token cost, repair count, and user correction. Then we ask a hard question. Did each added brain create measurable value or merely add expense and confidence? Capability should be promoted only when they improve held-out performance without creating new safety failures. The competitors built the pieces. They built memory, judgment, work, evidence, learning, presence, local models, devices, and the machines underneath them. Nightwing does not need to deny any of that. It needs to connect those strengths without losing the person at the center. The ambition is not an assistant that knows everything or an agent that controls everything. It is a system that understands what matters, acts within clear boundaries, proves what happened, and becomes more useful without becoming less accountable. The competitors built the pieces. Nightwing is the attempt to make the pieces become one accountable second brain.